right? 46 mils left on my phone. My purple you can't see well. I'm scared to use another marker because I'm scared you might not see it well. I'll try what? Let me try my blue one here. I'll try blue again. Because I'm scared you might not see the board well. Right? So I gave you a little illustration. So to what? To break even. To be profitable. So if a movie is made... So if a movie is made for what? If a movie is made for $200 million. Okay? Movie is made for $200 million. Keep this in mind. The Hollywood film studios have what? Have to pay back the what? The $200 million, obviously. That's to pay back the loan and recoup an additional $200 million to break even. Because they spent $200 million, to break even, they have to make $400 million. So Hollywood Film Studios have to pay back the $200 million, obviously, and recoup an additional $200 million to break even. See what I'm saying here? Now you wonder why the Hollywood Studios reject all the biggest actors, because they're taking huge risks with their movies. So Hollywood Film Studios have to pay back the $200 million and recoup an additional $200 million to break even, obviously. Break even. I'll say this. Anything after $400 million is profit. There's exceptions because you have advertising costs. Anything after $400 is now what? Is now profit, obviously. But I'm gonna say this. You also have advertising costs. Assuming they spend a good, I don't know, 20, 30, 4 million advertising costs, to make profit, I have to change markers. This marker's running out. I hope you can see my red wall. I'm going to use red here. I'll try red, okay? Right. So what? So to make profit, obviously, to make profit from a $200 million budget, to make profit for a $200 million budget movie, obviously, the company needs to make at least $700 million to $800 million plus. To make profit for a what? For a $200 million movie, if you're including advertising costs, you also have advertising. Advertising costs is usually not included in the budget. The company spent a good 50 to even what? So let's assume they spend $250 million in advertising, right? They spent $250 million including advertising, obviously. Let's say they spend $50 million in advertising. So $250 million including with the budget. To make profit for a $200 million or $250 million, I'll say $250 million, right? Right? To make profit for a $250 million movie, the film studios have what? Have to make a good what? A good $600 million plus to be profitable. See what I'm saying here? Profitable. Right, hence if a movie's made for $200 million, the companies are expecting to make a good 600, 700. They're expecting to make a good 600 million. I'll say 700 million. They need to make a good 700 million around to be profitable. Around there. 700 million plus to be profitable if a movie's made for 200 million. If a movie's made for 250 million, the company's expecting to make a good 700 million plus. 700 million plus to $1 billion, $900 million to be profitable. See what I'm saying here? Whereas if a movie's right? If a movie is made for what? If a movie is made for 100 million, right? The company needs to what? Needs to recoup 200 million to break even, obviously, because they have to pay back the $100 million loan. and they also have to make exceed the amount of money that they spent. So because they spent 100 million, they have to pay back. Because they borrowed money, they have to pay back the loan, obviously, which doesn't count. Obviously, that's negative. And then they have to, and then they have to what, earn the amount of money that they spent, which is so 200 million to break even, obviously. And anything, and right, to break even, but you also have advertising costs. Advertising costs can cost anywhere from 20 to 100 million dollars. So you got to keep that in mind, obviously. So if a movie is made for 100 million, the company needs to recoup 200 million to break even. To make profit, obviously, on a $100 million budget movie, the studio needs to do a good $450 to $500 million to be profitable. Because you also have the advertising costs. Because advertising is usually not a part of the budget. Advertising is what? Is an additional amount of money, obviously. And most companies spend a good 50 to like 40 to like 100 million in advertising costs. So let's say if it's 50 million in advertising, it's 150 million. To make profit, the company needs to do a good 500 million. To make profit, the company. So let's say if it's 150 million, the company needs to do a good what? 400 million, 50 million to be profitable. To make profit, the company has to make a good 400 plus million to be profitable for a $150 million budget movie. Because the company spent 100 million, the company borrowed 100 million, they have to pay back that $100 million, and they have to recoup the amount of money that they spent. So 200 million to break even point, but you also have advertising dollar, which could be a good $50 million. So that's 150 million. So 300 million to break even points. So to be profitable, they got to do at least 400 plus million dollars. 400 plus million dollars to what? 400 million plus dollars in the box office. $400 million in the box office is good profits. Is good profits, obviously. That's an example of good profits. Whereas if the movie does 500 or 600 million on a $150 million budget, or 700 million, obviously, they do 700, 500, or 600 million on a $150 million budget with the advertising costs. That is obviously considered a hit, obviously. And that's their goal. That's all the studio's goal. All the studio's goal is for the movies to be hits. Yes, it's nice to make good profits. If a movie is made for 150 million, it does 400 million, 450 million, that's not a hit, but the studio still made good profits, obviously. Whereas if it does 700 million, 500 million, or 600 million, that's considered a hit. And all the studios what? Aim for what? For a hit, obviously. At the box office. See what I'm saying here? Whereas if a movie is made for 200 million, the studios are expecting 700 million plus 800 million to $1 billion. If it's made for anything over 200 million, 250 million, 300 million, the studios are expecting anywhere between 800 to $1 billion for your movie. They're expecting a good 900 million to $1 billion for your movie. Whereas if it's 100 million, 150 million, 60 million, the studios are expecting your movie to do at least 400 million, 450 plus million, $500 million around there. 400 million for good profits, 500, 600 million to be a hit, or 700 million to be a mega hit, obviously. And all the studios aim for a hit at the box office, hence why they reject the B-listers. Because they are taking a huge risk with their movies. You see what I'm saying here? So I hope you guys understand the amount of risk that the studios are taking. The studios don't have billions lying around the bank. They have to take a loan from the bank. They have to pay back that loan. And they got to recoup the amount of money that they spent. And then and you also have advertising costs, because advertising costs is not included in the budget, man. They spend additional money, additional millions of dollars on advertising. And you have to keep that into account too, obviously. So all the studios aim for a hit at the box office, hence why they reject the B-listers, because they are not proven. They're not proven like the A-listers. See what I'm saying here? I'll give you some examples later on. So if a movie is made for 100 million, the company needs to recoup 200 million to break even. To break even, 200 million just to break even. To make profit, the company has to make a good. You also have additional advertising costs, right? To make profit, the company has to make a good $400 plus million in the box office just to make good profits. This is not a hit. This is just to make good profits. To be a hit, $150 million movie, the movie has to do at least 500, 600, even $500 million is like good profits. For the movie to be a hit, it has to do at least 600 to $700 million if it's a $150 million movie for it to be a hit. Whereas 400 million, 500 million is considered good profits. So the companies made a profit, but their movies weren't a hit. Obviously, that's a perfect example. Obviously, right? If a movie, I hope you guys can see the red well. Can you see it well? Yeah, you can see it well. If a movie is made for what? Let's say if a movie is made for 60 million, the company needs to recoup 120 million to break even. You see what I'm saying? Because they have to pay back the $60 million loan, and they also got to make the amount of money that they spent to break even. 120 million to what? To break even. To break even, obviously. So if a movie's made for 60 million, to be profitable, it only needs to do about 250 million or something like that. But you also have advertising costs. So to be profitable, the movie has to do to be profitable, right? Because you also have advertising costs. Don't forget that you have advertising costs. So let's say the company spends an additional 30 million on advertising costs. That's 90 million. So 90 million, the studio has to recoup what? 180 to be profitable. So to be profitable, the studio has to do what? I'll get 250 million around. The studio has to make a good, I don't know, I'll say 240 million around there. For what? For good profits. This is for good profits, obviously. Whereas if the movie does 300 if the movie does 300 million, you know what I'm saying, 300, 350, 400 million, that is obviously a hit, obviously. See what I'm saying here? Because they made a good chunk of profits, obviously. So let's say if a movie is made for 60 million, the company needs to recoup 120 million to break even, but you also have advertising costs. So let's say they spend 30 million in advertising. That's 90 million. To break even, they have to make 180 million, obviously. 180 million to break even. So to be profitable, the studios have to make a good 200 plus million to make good profits. So if a studio makes, I don't know, 30 extra million profit, it's not a hit, but at least the studio made good profits themselves, obviously. They made good profits. Whereas if it does 300, 350, 400 million, that's considered a hit. Like The Matrix. The Matrix was made for 60 million, they did 400 million. That's considered a hit, obviously. That's a huge hit. Whereas if the movie was made like 250 million, it wouldn't be a hit, but the studio still made good profits for their movie at the box office. Good profits at the box office, obviously. See what I'm saying here? Whereas if it did 300, 350, 400 million, that's considered a hit at the box office. And hence why they reject the B-list actors, because the B-list actors are not good for the show business. They can't sell their movies well. As these companies are taking, you have to understand, B-list actors, these Hollywood companies are taking a huge risk with the movies. They're borrowing money from the bank. The last thing they want to happen, there's nothing worse than getting that box office receipt and you find out that you lost money. It's not good. Hence why the A-list actors are on the market, because they're proven actors in the industry. They can sell their movies. The rising stars also are the ones who intermingle with them. Those are the reason why the B-list actors are getting rejected is because the A-list actors are on the market. They're proven in the industry, whereas the B-list actors are not proven because they can't sell their movies well. And the ones who can sell their movies well, sell their indie movies well, those are the ones who have a higher chance of being an A-list actor. Whereas the ones who can't sell their movies well, only a good 1% of B-list actors can sell their independent movies well. Whereas 99% of them can't sell their movies well. That's why they're going to stay in television for the rest of their life, as they're not good for the what? They're not good for the show business. So if a movie is made for 60 million, the company needs to recoup 120 million to break even. You also have additional advertising costs. Don't forget that. Let's say they spend 30 million advertising. It's now 90 million, and they have to recoup 180 million just to break even. Hence, anything over 180 is pretty much profit. But so good example of good profits would be like 200 million, 220 million, 230, 240 million. That's an example of good profits at the box office, obviously. Whereas 300 million, 350 million, 400 million, that's considered a huge profit as the studio made over 120 million in profit, 150 million profit, 200 million profit, 220 million profit. That's considered a huge hit, obviously. And all the studios aim for a huge hit, obviously. All the studios aim for what? For a huge hit. That's their goal. That's their goal, obviously. That's their goal. But if they make good profits, they're happy, obviously, because they didn't lose money. But all of them strive for a hit, for what? For the hit, obviously, for a huge hit. Hence why guys like Shia LaBeouf are is an A-list actor, because Transformers was made for 150 million. For a movie made for 150 million, you only need to do a good 400 million to be profitable around there. 450 million to be profitable. But Transformers did 700 million, hence it was a huge hit. And the company made hundreds of millions in profit. Hence why Shia LaBeouf is an A-list actor, because he proved that he can what? Sell his movies well. And hence why Chris Hemsworth was an A-list actor, because Thor was also a pretty big hit too. Thor wasn't the biggest hit out of all the Marvel movies, but the movie was profitable, obviously. Hence why they're A-list actors. Right? So I hope you guys learned a huge lesson from what? The box office in Hollywood, how it works. Obviously. I'll talk about my company for a sec. And then after that, I'll talk about the how the revenue system works in Hollywood, okay? I'll say revenue system here. That way I don't forget. Revenue system, okay? Let's talk about my company. I'm investing $970 million towards Last Hope for Zayas, obviously, right? Now, because I did not take a loan, I don't have to pay any money back because I didn't take a loan. Because I did not take a loan, I don't what? I only have to what? I only have to exceed the what? The amount of money I spent. I spent to what? To be profitable, obviously. See what I'm saying here? I have to exceed the amount of money that I spend to be profitable. So because in Hollywood the studios take a loan from the bank, they have to pay back the loan first. And once they pay back that loan, it's negative. They have to what? In order to get to the positive, they have to break even first. So when the studios take a loan from the bank, when they have to pay back the loan, when they pay back the loan, it's let's say if they invest $100 million, when they pay back the loan, it's still negative 100 million. To be on the positive, they have to what? They have to recoup 200 million, and anything after 200 million is now profit. But I told you also have advertising costs, since they have to what? It rises the amount of money they have to recoup to break even, obviously, right? So because I'm investing $970 million towards the Last Hope for Zayas movie, obviously, because I did not take a loan, I only have to exceed the amount of money I spent to be profitable. So let's say, for example, if I make Zayas for 970 million, even if my movie does 1.4 billion, even if I make 1.4 billion, which I won't, I'll make like 4 billion off the movie. Even if I make 1.4, 1.5 billion, my movie still made profit because I exceed the amount of money that I spent. See what I'm saying here? As I did not have to pay back a loan, obviously. So let's say if I put 970 million towards Last Hope for Zayas, because I did not take a loan, I only have to exceed the amount of money I spent to be profitable, obviously. Whereas in Hollywood, as I'm gonna make a good $4 billion. Me and my wife are gonna make a good $4 billion, man. $4 billion off the movie, off the posters and movies, off the posters and posters and movies. So $970 million towards Last Hope for Zayas. Because I did not take a loan, I only have to exceed the amount of money. So because I took a loan from the bank, because I didn't take a loan from the bank, I don't have to pay back the loan because I funded the movie myself. All I have to do is just exceed the amount of money I spent for the movie, and now my movie's profitable, obviously. Whereas in Hollywood, because they take loans, they have to pay back the loan first. Hence, it's negative, and it's negative. To get to the positive, they have to recoup the amount of money that they spent. So if a movie is made for 50 million, the company has to pay back the loan, and it's still negative. To get to the positive, they have to make 100 million just to break even. And anything after 100 million is now profit. But don't forget, you also have advertising costs, and the companies even have to make more money just to be profitable. Obviously, see what I'm saying here? So because I did not take a loan, I only have to exceed the amount of money I spent to be profitable. Whereas in Hollywood, the studios take a loan. Obviously, they take a loan from the bank. Obviously, hence they what? They have to what? Pay back the loan first, which is what? Which is negative, obviously. There's on a negative. And then they have to what? Then they have to recoup what they spent, obviously, to break even. What they spent to break even. And once they break even, anything after that is profit, obviously. But you also have advertising costs. Don't forget that. So once they spend anything after that is profit. See what I'm saying here? So I hope you guys understand the way the box office system works. And hence why I'm going to keep saying it. Hence why the big studios reject the B-list actors, because they're taking a huge risk with their movies. And the A-list actors are proving the industry, hence they're not going to hire some nobody B-list actor who's not proving the industry. They'd rather hire someone who's proving the industry. That way it lowers the risk of what? The movie being a flop and them losing money, obviously. See what I'm saying here? So because me and my wife are going to invest $9 million towards House of Zane's movie, we're not taking a loan. I'm not going to take a loan from the bank. I'm just going to I'll fund it myself. Because I did not take a loan, I only have to see the amount of money I spent to be profitable. I don't have to pay back any loan at the bank, obviously. Whereas in Hollywood, the studios take a loan from the bank, hence they have to pay back the loan first on it's negative, obviously. Then they have to recoup. So the moment they pay off the loan, it's still negative, as they have to recoup the amount of money that they spent to break even, obviously. So whereas in Hollywood, the studios take a loan from the bank, hence they have to pay back the loan first, negative, obviously. Then they have to recoup what they spent to break even. And anything after that is profit, but you also have additional costs like advertising, which can cost anywhere from 30 to even 100 million. Hence they even have to make more money just to be profitable, obviously. See what I'm saying here? Now let's talk about the revenue system in Hollywood. So how does the revenue system work? So you have the Hollywood film studios, obviously. And you have the theater companies. The theater chain companies, obviously, right? So how is the revenue split in Hollywood? This is how the revenue is split, okay? There's many ways. This is how it works, right? The Hollywood film studios, right? They get what? They either get 100%. This is how it works. I'll say HFS. Okay. So Hollywood film studios, they what? They pay a flat fee to get. They pay a flat fee. I'm running out of camera space. They pay a flat fee to what? To the theater chains, obviously, to the theater chains, TC, to the theater chains, to get their movies, to put their movies in the theaters, right? To put their movies in the theaters. And in return, they get what? They get 100% of the what? Of the ticket sales, obviously. That's how it works. This is for the big Hollywood companies. Whereas independent movies, there's a good chance there's just profit sharing going on with the ticket sales. There's a good chance the independent movies, like they might do a thing where the movie, the studios or film entertainment company, they get like 60% of the profits, and the theater chains get like 40% of the profits for independent movies. But for big budget movies, the studios get 100% of the profits. Hollywood's fucking greedy, obviously. So how it works, the Hollywood film studios, they pay a flat fee to the theater chains to put their movies in the theaters, and in return they get a 100% of ticket sales, obviously. Hence box office. Hence why what? The concessions are food. Hence why the food and drinks at theaters are so expensive, obviously, because the movie theater companies, that's where they make all their money. Because for all the big budget Hollywood movies, the Hollywood companies take 100% of the ticket sales, the box office sales. The theater chains, for them to make the money, they have to price their food for a lot of money. That way they can make profit, obviously. Hence why the food and drinks at theaters are so expensive, obviously. Because what? Because the Hollywood film studios take 100% of the profits of the ticket sales. Hollywood film studios take what? Take 100% of the what? Of the ticket sales, obviously. See what I'm saying here? This is the first way they get. There's many ways. There's many different ways companies get paid, obviously. But for the big Hollywood companies, they get 100% of the tickets, obviously, right? So the Hollywood film studios and the theater chain companies, this is how the revenue split. The Hollywood film studios, they pay a flat fee to the theater chains. You're looking at a good, I don't know, millions in cost, obviously, to put their movies in the theaters, and in return they get 100% of the ticket sales, which is the box office, obviously. Hence why the food and drinks at theaters are so expensive, because the Hollywood film studios take 100% of the ticket sales, and what? And the theater chains need to make profit, obviously. Need to make money. Hence why they price their food for so much money, obviously. They're smart too. Because, okay, you're not allowed to bring food in the theaters, hence what? The moviegoers are left with no choice but to buy the food, and hence they make the profit for that. It's smart business, obviously. And hence why what? The theater chains need to make money, what? And the theater chains need to make money, right, for themselves, obviously. For themselves. Hence why food is so expensive at what? At the theaters. Because the movie companies, the Hollywood companies take 100% of the ticket sales. There's exceptions. If it's an independent movie, the theater chains might take a percentage of the royalties from there might be some profit sharing in the ticket sales, obviously, if it's an independent movie. But if it's a big budget movie, no way. The Hollywood companies take 100% of the ticket sales. If it's a big Hollywood movie, guaranteed they take 100% of the tickets because Hollywood's fucking greedy. And hence why what? Right? You also have profit sharing. Obviously. A perfect example of profit sharing is what? SkySource and Amazon, obviously. Right? So SkySource, I'll talk more about this in my Swim with the Sharks video. SkySource. So this is another way. SkySource what? SkySource takes what? Takes 60%, and Amazon takes 40%. But the difference between this profit sharing and the other profit sharing I talked about is that I don't have to pay Amazon any money. Amazon just takes 40% of all the sales. Hence why this profit sharing is, in my opinion, is the best, honestly. Because the Hollywood companies is the best way of profit sharing. Because the Hollywood companies, they have to pay the theater companies a fee. Right? So you have the advertising dollar, and you also have the amount of money they have to pay the theater chains, which can range from $10 to $20 to $30 million around there, $40 million, a lot of money, obviously. Hence why most movies that are made for $200 million, they have to do at least like $800, $900 million just to be profitable. Because you also have the fee for the theater chains also too. Don't forget that, the advertising costs. This profit sharing is the best because SkySource takes 60%, Amazon takes 40%, and SkySource does not have to pay Amazon anything. Does not have to pay Amazon a distribution fee. Hence why this revenue sharing is the best, obviously. And Sky Source does not pay Amazon a distribution fee. Amazon just takes 40% of the profit. Amazon just takes 40% of all what? The posters sales, and 4K Blu-ray sales. Hence why this system is the best in my opinion. Because I don't have to pay Amazon a dime to put my movie. I don't have to pay Amazon anything to put my movie to distribute my movie. Amazon just distributes my movie, and they just take 40% of all the royalties. Obviously, of all they take 40% of the pie. Whereas for the Hollywood companies, they have to pay advertising though. I don't have to pay any advertising though because I have the keys, obviously, so I'm lucky, obviously. But in Hollywood, they have to pay the Hollywood companies have to pay the theater chains a flat fee, millions of dollars, obviously. Hence we're taking, which is risky, obviously. They take 100% of the ticket sales, but it's not guaranteed their movies are going to be profitable. Hence it's risky. Whereas for this profit sharing, I don't have to pay for this profit sharing with Amazon. I don't have to pay Amazon a dime. Amazon just takes 40% of the pie for all the sales, and they distribute my movie, and they take 4% of the pie. Sky doesn't have to pay Amazon a dime for distribution. Amazon distributes the movies and posters, and in return they just take 40% of the pie, which is a much better revenue sharing system, obviously, than the Hollywood system, obviously. See what I'm saying here? Show my camera off here.